Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of the Terra Nova, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Prime was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in space. The station stretched for miles in every direction, with gleaming towers and spinning rings that housed millions of beings from across the galaxy. "Still hard to believe we're really here," said Dr. Lisa Kane, joining him at the window. She was Earth's best expert on alien cultures, and she had studied every species in the Galactic Confederation for the past 2 years. Jake nodded, but said nothing. Today was the day they would finally get their answer. After 2 long years of meetings, presentations, and diplomatic talks, the Confederation Council would vote on Earth's membership application. Either humanity would join the greatest alliance in the galaxy, or they would be sent home with nothing. "The docking bay is straight ahead, Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Ross from the pilot's seat. "They're giving us clearance to land." As their ship moved through the docking procedures, Jake thought about how they had gotten here. It started 3 years ago when humanity finally cracked faster-than-light travel. The breakthrough came from a small team of scientists working in a lab in California. Within months, Earth had built its first starship and sent it to the nearest star system. That's where they met the Zilani. The Zilani were tall, thin beings with blue skin and large black eyes. They had been traveling between stars for over 1,000 years. When they found humans poking around their territory, they were curious rather than angry. They brought news of the Galactic Confederation and invited Earth to make contact. The Confederation was everything humanity had dreamed of. Hundreds of species working together, sharing technology and knowledge, keeping peace across thousands of worlds. They had cured diseases, ended poverty on most planets, and created a society where different species could live and work together. Earth wanted in badly, but the Confederation had rules. New species had to prove they were ready for membership. They had to show they could be peaceful, stable, and mature enough to handle the responsibilities that came with joining such a large group. Jake and his team had spent 2 years trying to prove that humanity was ready. They had shown the aliens Earth's art, music, and literature. They had demonstrated human technology and scientific achievements. They had even opened Earth's history books, showing both the good and bad parts of human civilization. "Captain Morrison, Ambassador Fisher wants to see you in the conference room," said a voice over the ship's communication system. Jake found Ambassador Kate Fisher reviewing her notes one more time. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been a diplomat for 30 years and had never failed to close a deal she really wanted. "How are you feeling, Kate?" Jake asked. "Nervous," she admitted. "The preliminary votes weren't encouraging. The Zilani seem supportive, and a few of the smaller species are on our side. But the big players..." She shook her head. Jake knew what she meant. The Korath were a military species that controlled dozens of star systems. Their General Thekvos had made it clear that he thought humans were too aggressive and unpredictable. The Ethereal Collective, a group of energy beings who had transcended physical form centuries ago, considered humanity too primitive and emotional. Worst of all were the Zilani leadership. Despite being the species that first contacted Earth, their overlord Vex Cathran seemed to have turned against humanity during the evaluation process. "Whatever happens in there," Jake said, "we did our best. Earth will be proud of what we accomplished." Kate smiled. "Let's go find out if our best was good enough." The council chambers were enormous. Representatives from hundreds of species sat in curved rows that rose up like a vast amphitheater. Jake had been in this room several times over the past 2 years, but it still took his breath away. Beings of every shape and size filled the seats. Some breathed air like humans, others floated in tanks of liquid, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special machines. The human delegation took their assigned seats in the center of the room. Jake looked around at the faces watching them. Some seemed friendly or curious. Others looked bored or annoyed. Many showed no expression that human eyes could read. At the front of the chamber, Overlord Vex Catherine rose to speak. The Zilani leader was nearly 8 feet tall, with skin that seemed to shift between blue and purple depending on the light. When he spoke, His voice carried clearly through the translation devices that let every species understand each other. We gather today to render final judgment on the application of the species known as humanity for membership in our confederation. Vex Cathran began. For 2 standard years, we have studied these beings. We have examined their history, their technology, their culture, and their character. Jake felt his heart pounding. Kate reached over and squeezed his hand. The evidence before us is troubling, the Overlord continued. These humans have spent their entire recorded history fighting wars against their own kind. They have destroyed countless other species on their homeworld. They make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. Their technology is primitive compared to most members of this council. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Jake heard electronic screeches, clicking sounds, and other noises that the translation system couldn't convert into words. He didn't need a translator to know what they meant. General Thekvos stood up next. The Korath was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, covered in thick armor plating. "These humans glorify violence," he said in a voice like grinding stone. "Their entertainment focuses on conflict and war. Their heroes are soldiers and fighters. How can we trust such beings with the secrets of galactic civilization?" More murmurs, louder this time. Jake saw several representatives nodding in agreement. An ethereal collective speaker floated forward, its energy form contained in a crystalline shell. "Humanity lacks the emotional maturity required for Confederation membership," it said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "They are driven by pride, anger, and fear. Such primitive impulses have no place in our advanced society." Jake wanted to stand up and argue, but Kate held him back with a look. This was not the time for humans to prove the aliens' point about being emotional and unpredictable. The vote was quick and decisive. Of the 847 species represented in the chamber, only 23 voted in favor of human membership. Even some of the species that had seemed friendly during the evaluation process voted against Earth. Overlord Vex Cathran announced the result, with what might have been satisfaction in his strange voice. "The application of humanity for Confederation membership is denied. This species may reapply for consideration in 1,000 standard years, provided they demonstrate significant growth in maturity and wisdom during that time." 1,000 years. Jake felt like he had been punched in the stomach. No human alive today would live to see Earth get another chance. "Furthermore," the Overlord continued, "this council strongly recommends that humanity focus on internal development rather than expansion into space. The galaxy is a dangerous place for species that lack proper judgment and emotional control." The message was clear. Humanity was not welcome in galactic society. They were being told to go home and stay there. As the council session ended and delegates began filing out, Jake noticed something else. Several alien representatives were avoiding eye contact with the human delegation. A few even seemed uncomfortable, as if they knew something the humans didn't. Dr. Kane leaned over to whisper in Jake's ear. "Did you notice how quickly some of those votes came in? Almost like they had already made up their minds before we even presented our case." Jake had noticed. This hadn't been a fair evaluation. For some reason, powerful voices in the Confederation had decided that humanity was a threat, and they had convinced the others to reject Earth's application. As they walked back to their ship, Ambassador Fisher was quiet. Finally, she spoke. "Well, we know where we stand now. The question is, what do we do about it?" Jake looked back at the massive station one more time. Somewhere in those gleaming towers, species from across the galaxy were making decisions that affected billions of lives. Earth had no voice in those decisions, no way to influence galactic events, no protection if something went wrong. "We go home," he said finally, "and we figure out how to survive in a galaxy that doesn't want us." 6 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at Nexus Prime. Commander Pete Hayes sat in the observation deck of the Deep Space Monitoring Station Watchdog, staring at the endless field of stars beyond Earth's solar system. His job was to keep an eye on the galaxy and report anything unusual back to Earth Command. Most days, nothing happened. The Galactic Confederation had made it clear that humanity should stay in their own corner of space. No major shipping lanes passed through human territory. No important diplomatic meetings happened anywhere near Earth. The galaxy moved on without them. But today was different. "Commander, you need to see this," called Chief Engineer Amy Ross from the sensor station. Her voice carried an edge that made Pete look up from his coffee. "What is it, Amy?" "Long-range scanners are picking up something big. Really big. Coming from the outer rim, moving toward the galaxy's center." Pete walked over to look at the display screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dozens of contacts, each one massive, moving in perfect formation through space. The computer estimated their size at over 10 miles long each. "Have we seen ships like this before?" Pete asked. "Never. The database has no matches. These aren't like anything the Confederation uses." Pete stared at the screen. The fleet was still months away from any inhabited systems, but they were definitely heading toward Confederation space. "Get me a direct link to Admiral Blake on Earth. Priority 1. Within an hour, every human monitoring station in the sector was focused on the mysterious fleet. The news that came back was troubling. The ships showed no life signs that human sensors could detect. They gave off no communication signals. They simply moved through space in perfect silence, like a school of metal fish swimming through the dark. 3 weeks later, the first contact happened. The Korath military outpost at Vega 7 sent out a patrol to investigate when the unknown ships entered their territory. General Thek Voss himself authorized the mission, sending 3 of his best warships to make contact. What happened next shocked the entire galaxy. The unknown ships opened fire without warning. But it wasn't just an attack. It was complete destruction. The Korath vessels, each one a masterpiece of military engineering, were torn apart in seconds. The energy weapons used by the attackers were unlike anything in the Confederation's database. But worse than the destruction was what came after. The unknown ships began to consume the wreckage. Massive mechanical arms reached out from the alien vessels and pulled in every piece of metal, every bit of technology, every scrap of material from the destroyed Korath ships. Then they moved on to the outpost itself. Colonel Steve Turner was in the Earth Command briefing room when the news arrived. The Confederation had finally sent a message to Earth, not an invitation or an apology, but a warning. The unknown. Attackers, now being called Devourers by frightened Confederation officials, were consuming everything in their path. "How bad is it?" asked Admiral Ron Blake, commander of Earth's Space Forces. "Bad," Turner replied, reading from the intelligence report. "The Devourers hit 3 more systems after Vega 7. Same pattern every time. They destroy everything that fights back, then harvest all the material and technology they can find." Dr. Lisa Kane, who had returned to Earth after the failed diplomatic mission, studied the tactical reports. "Look at this. The Confederation sent 4 different fleets to stop them. Each time the Devourers adapted their tactics. It's like they learn from every battle." "Learn how?" Blake asked. "The reports say the Devourers changed their weapons and strategies based on what the Confederation threw at them. Energy shields that blocked pulse weapons in one battle were useless in the next battle because the Devourers had already developed new types of attacks." Turner pulled up a star map showing the Devourers' path of destruction. "They're not just randomly attacking. They're moving in a straight line toward the galaxy's center, taking out military installations, harvesting technology, and leaving nothing behind." The room fell silent as everyone stared at the map. The Devourers were heading directly for the most populated systems in the galaxy, including Nexus Prime. "What about the Confederation's main fleet?" Blake asked. "They're gathering everything they have," Turner said. "But from what we're seeing, their standard tactics aren't working. The Devourers adapt too quickly." Over the following weeks, the situation grew worse. The Ethereal Collective lost 3 colonies when their energy-based defenses proved useless against Devourer technology. The Zilani homeworld sent out desperate calls for help as the mechanical fleet approached their outer territories. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to oversee Earth's intelligence operations, watched the reports with growing concern. The same aliens who had rejected humanity were now dying by the thousands. The Confederation's advanced technology and centuries of military experience meant nothing against an enemy that could adapt to any strategy. It's like watching a chess master play against a computer that learns every move, he told his staff during a morning briefing. Except the computer keeps getting smarter and the chess master keeps using the same old playbook. The breakthrough came when Commander Hayes detected something the Confederation had missed. His deep space sensors picked up the Devourer's internal communications, not words or signals that humans could understand, but patterns of energy that revealed how the alien machines thought. They're not just learning, Hayes reported to Earth Command. They're processing every battle like a giant computer program. Every strategy the Confederation uses gets analyzed, categorized, and countered. But there's something else. What? Blake asked. The Devourers expect their enemies to be logical. All their adaptations assume that the other side will use the most efficient tactics available. They're built to fight opponents who think like machines. Dr. Kane understood immediately. The Confederation species have been working together for centuries. They've developed standardized military procedures, unified command structures, predictable strategic thinking. They fight like they're all part of the same machine. And the Devourers are designed to fight machines, Morrison added. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Confederation's greatest strength, their ability to coordinate hundreds of species into a unified military force, had become their greatest weakness against an enemy that could predict and counter unified strategies. News from the war zone grew more desperate by the day. The Korath homeworld fell after a 3-day siege. The Devourers harvested every piece of technology on the planet, including the orbital defense platforms that had protected the world for centuries. General Thek Voss was among the billions who died in the attack. Refugee ships began fleeing toward the galactic core, carrying stories of unstoppable mechanical monsters that consumed entire civilizations. Some refugees even approached human space, begging for sanctuary from the nightmare sweeping across the galaxy. The Confederation Council, now meeting in emergency session on a backup station, sent out a desperate message to every corner of the galaxy. The transmission reached Earth 3 days later, and Admiral Blake called an emergency meeting to discuss its contents. They're asking for help, Blake announced to the assembled Earth Command staff. Every species, every government, every military organization in the galaxy. They want volunteers to join the fight against the Devourers. The same people who told us we weren't good enough to join their club? Morrison asked. The very same. The room buzzed with angry voices. Many of the officers felt that the Confederation deserved whatever was happening to them. After all, they had rejected humanity when Earth needed friends. Why should humans risk their lives to save aliens who had treated them with such contempt? But Dr. Kane raised a different point. If the Devourers consume the entire Confederation, where do you think they'll go next? Earth is in this galaxy too. We can't hide forever. Turner pulled up the tactical projections. At their current rate of advance, the Devourers will reach the galactic core in 8 months. If they harvest all the technology and resources there, they'll be unstoppable. From there, they could spread to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Including ours, Blake said quietly. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for helping the Confederation despite their previous treatment of humanity. Others wanted to use the crisis as leverage to force the aliens to accept Earth as an equal partner. Still others believed humanity should focus on defending their own territory and let the galaxy sort out its own problems. Finally, Captain Morrison spoke up. What if we're looking at this wrong? What if the question isn't whether to help the Confederation, but whether to take charge of the fight? Ourselves? Blake raised an eyebrow. Explain. Their strategies aren't working because they're too predictable. But human military thinking is different. We don't have centuries of standardized procedures. We adapt, improvise, and use tactics that other species might consider crazy or inefficient. You're talking about humans leading a galactic war effort, Blake said slowly. I'm talking about humans doing what we do best, finding solutions that nobody else thought of. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. It was an audacious idea, bordering on insane. Humanity had been rejected by the OI Confederation just 6 months ago. Now they were considering taking charge of the galaxy's defense. But as reports continued to arrive showing Confederation fleets being destroyed by the dozen, it became clear that conventional approaches were failing. The Devourers were winning because they could predict and counter every strategy the unified alien forces used. Maybe it was time for some unpredictable human thinking. "Get me President Price on the line," Blake ordered. "It's time to make a decision that's going to change everything." President Helen Price stood in the Oval Office, looking at the reports scattered across her desk. Each one told the same story. The Galactic Confederation was losing the war badly. In just 2 months, the Devourers had destroyed over 40 star systems. Billions of lives were gone, and the mechanical fleet was getting stronger with each victory. The emergency session of Earth's Global Assembly had been going on for 6 hours. Representatives from every nation on Earth were arguing about what humanity should do. Some wanted to help the Confederation. Others said Earth should focus on defending itself. A few suggested that humans should try to negotiate with the Devourers. General Mike Carter, Earth's top military commander, had a different idea. "We don't ask for permission," he said, addressing the assembly. "We take charge of this war and fight it our way." The room erupted in arguments. The representative from China stood up first. "You're talking about declaring war on behalf of the entire galaxy. We don't have the authority to do that." "The Confederation rejected us," added the delegate from Brazil. "Why should we risk human lives for aliens who don't want us?" President Price raised her hand for quiet. "General Carter, explain your plan." Carter walked to the front of the room and activated a holographic display showing the current military situation. Red dots marked Devourer positions. Blue areas showed what remained of Confederation territory. "The problem isn't that the Confederation is weak," Carter began. "The problem is that they fight like a computer program. Every species follows the same basic strategies. They coordinate their attacks, use standard formations, and make logical decisions based on military doctrine that's hundreds of years old." He touched the display and new information appeared. "The Devourers are machines. They analyze enemy tactics and develop counters. Every time the Confederation tries a new strategy, the Devourers figure it out and adapt. It's like playing chess against a computer that gets smarter with every move." "So how do we beat them?" asked the representative from Germany. "We don't play chess," Carter said with a grin. "We play poker." Captain Alex Stone was in the engine room of humanity's newest warship, the New Horizon, when he got the emergency call. The ship was still being tested, but Earth Command needed it operational immediately. The New Horizon was different from anything the Confederation had ever built. Instead of focusing on raw firepower or defensive systems, human engineers had designed it for flexibility. The ship could change its weapon configurations in minutes, alter its flight patterns without warning, and operate with a crew that made decisions independently rather than following rigid command structures. "Captain Stone to the bridge," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. When Stone arrived, he found his crew studying sensor readings from the latest battle reports. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, his tactical officer, looked up from her station with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, I think we found something," she said. "Look at these attack patterns." Stone examined the data. "What am I looking at?" Every time the Devourers adapt to a new Confederation strategy, they assume the enemy will keep using that strategy. They build their defenses around the assumption that their opponents are logical and consistent. But humans aren't logical and consistent, Stone realized. Exactly. We change our minds, we take risks that don't make mathematical sense, and we do things that look stupid until they work. Dr. Rachel Webb, Earth's top weapons researcher, had been working around the clock since the crisis began. Her team had developed new weapon systems based on a simple idea. If the Devourers could adapt to any consistent strategy, then humans needed to use inconsistent strategies. "The key is randomness," she explained to President Price during a video conference. "Not true randomness, but controlled chaos. Our weapons and tactics need to change faster than the Devourers can analyze them." "Can you build systems like that?" Price asked. "We already have. Human military thinking has always been about adaptation and improvisation. We just need to turn that into technology. Webb's team had created weapons that could switch between different types of energy output randomly. They had developed ship systems that could change their operating frequencies without warning. Most importantly, they had designed command structures that encouraged individual initiative rather than rigid obedience to orders. It goes against everything the Confederation believes about military efficiency, Webb admitted. But efficiency isn't what wins wars against adaptive enemies. Unpredictability is. The debate in Earth's Global Assembly continued for 3 days. Finally, President Price called for a vote. The question was simple. Should humanity take control of the galactic defense effort, or should they offer to help as junior partners in the Confederation's military structure? The vote was close, but the decision was made. Earth would not ask for permission to lead the fight against the Devourers. They would simply do it. President Price's speech to the galaxy was broadcast on every available communication channel. She spoke from the Global Assembly Hall, with representatives from every Earth nation standing behind her. People of the galaxy, she began. The Galactic Confederation has deemed humanity unworthy of membership. They said we were too young, too aggressive, and too unpredictable to join their civilized society. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, those same qualities will save you all. The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and intense. Some Confederation leaders were outraged that humans would dare to take charge without permission. Others were desperate enough to accept help from anyone. A few species openly welcomed human leadership, having lost faith in the Confederation's ability to stop the Devourers. Overlord Vex Cathran, speaking from the Emergency Confederation capital, denounced Earth's declaration. These humans show their true nature, he said, in a broadcast from the temporary council chambers. They exploit our crisis to seize power they were rightfully denied. But his words carried less weight than before. The Zalani had lost 12 colonies to the Devourers, and Vex Catherine's own homeworld was in the path of the advancing mechanical fleet. General Thekvos was dead, killed when the Korath homeworld fell. His replacement commander Braknos sent a message directly to Earth Command. We will follow human leadership, he said simply. Our way is not working. Fleet Admiral Dan Cooper took command of the combined galactic defense forces from his flagship, the Terra Prime. The ship had been built in just 6 weeks using human industrial methods that prioritized speed over perfection. It wasn't the most beautiful vessel in space, but it was designed to coordinate the kind of chaotic warfare that humans did best. Cooper's first order shocked every Confederation military officer who heard it. All ships are authorized to break formation and engage targets of opportunity. Captains will use their own judgment for tactics and weapon selection. No battle plan will be followed for more than 30 minutes before changing to a new approach. To species that had spent centuries perfecting coordinated military actions, it sounded like madness. To humans, it sounded like Tuesday. The first test of human leadership came at the Battle of Kepler Station, a vital refueling depot in the Inner Rim territories. The Devourers approached with their usual methodical precision, expecting to face organized resistance that they could analyze and counter. Instead, they found chaos. Human ships attacked from unexpected angles using weapons that changed their properties mid-battle. Confederation vessels, following human tactical guidance, broke their traditional formations and operated as independent units. Some ships retreated when they should have advanced. Others charged into seemingly hopeless situations and somehow survived. Lieutenant Commander Kim watched the battle from the bridge of the New Horizon. The Devourers are trying to adapt, she reported to Captain Stone. But every time they develop a counter to one of our tactics, we've already switched to something else. How are they responding? They're slowing down. Their adaptation systems are getting overloaded with too many variables to process. For the first time since the war began, Devourer ships began to retreat, not because they were destroyed, but because they couldn't predict what the defending forces would do next. The victory at Kepler Station sent shockwaves through both the Confederation and the Devourer fleet. Word spread quickly that human tactics had succeeded where traditional military approaches had failed. More species began requesting permission to join the human-led defense forces. Even some of the aliens who had voted against Earth's Confederation membership sent messages offering their support. But the Devourers were learning too. Intelligence reports suggested that the mechanical fleet was changing its approach, massing for a massive strike that would test human leadership to its limits. Captain Stone studied the latest reconnaissance data. The Devourers had stopped their systematic advance through Confederation space. Instead, they were gathering their entire remaining fleet for a single decisive battle. "Where are they heading?" Stone asked. Kim checked the projected course. "Earth," she said quietly. "They're coming straight for us." The message was clear. If humans wanted to lead the galactic defense, they would have to prove they could defend their own homeworld. The final battle would be fought in humanity's backyard, with the fate of the entire galaxy hanging in the balance. Admiral Cooper received the news with grim satisfaction. "They want to face us at our strongest point," he told his staff. "Good. Let them come to us." The sensors aboard Earth's orbital defense station Guardian detected them first. Hundreds of massive ships moving through space in perfect formation, heading directly for humanity's home system. The Devourer fleet was larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen before. Fleet Admiral Dan Cooper stood in the command center of the Terra Prime, watching the enemy approach. Around him, officers from dozens of different species worked together preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Human commanders worked alongside Korath warriors, Zilani scientists, and even energy beings from the ethereal collective. "How long until they reach Earth?" Cooper asked. 6 hours, replied Commander Pete Hayes, now serving as Cooper's intelligence chief. "They're not trying to hide their approach. It's like they want us to see them coming." Captain Alex. Stone joined the meeting via video link from the New Horizon, which was positioned with the forward defense fleet. "Admiral, we've got ships from 43 different species ready to fight, but the Devourers outnumber us 3-1. Cooper nodded. "Numbers won't matter if we fight smart. What's the status on our special preparations?" "Lieutenant Commander." Sarah Kim answered from her position at the tactical station. "All civilian vessels have been armed and are standing by. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, even space construction platforms. Everything that can fly is ready to join the fight." This was the human approach that had shocked their alien allies. Instead of trying to build the perfect military fleet, Earth had converted everything that could move in space into potential weapons. Garbage scows carried missile launchers. Tourist ships had been fitted with energy cannons. Even the space elevator had been turned into a massive orbital defense platform. "It's completely against military doctrine," admitted Commander Bracknos, the new Korath leader. "But then again, military doctrine hasn't been working against these machines." President Helen Price was in the Situation Room deep beneath the Global Assembly Building, surrounded by Earth's top leaders. Every nation on the planet had contributed ships, weapons, or personnel to the defense effort. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united in a single cause. "Reports are coming in from across the galaxy," announced General Mike Carter. "Every surviving Confederation world is watching this battle. If we win, we prove that human leadership can save the galaxy. If we lose, we won't lose," Price said firmly. "Our people have faced impossible odds before. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and everything else the universe has thrown at us. We're not going to give up now." Dr. Rachel Webb's voice came through the communication system from her research station on the moon. "Admiral Cooper, the randomization systems are online. All weapons platforms are ready to switch configurations every 60 seconds. The Devourers won't be able to predict what we're going to hit them with." The plan was pure human thinking. Instead of trying to outgun the Devourers, Earth's forces would overwhelm their adaptation systems with too much chaos to process. Every ship would fight differently. Every weapon would behave unpredictably. Every tactical decision would be made independently by individual commanders. To military minds trained in discipline and coordination, it looked like madness. To humans, it looked like the only way to win. "Enemy fleet has reached the outer defense perimeter," announced Hayes. They're beginning their attack run. The first wave of Devourer ships moved toward Earth's outer planets. They had learned from previous battles and were trying to adapt to human tactics. But what they found was unlike anything they had faced before. Human defense ships didn't form neat battle lines. Instead, they swarmed around the enemy like angry insects, attacking from every direction at once. Some ships worked together in small groups. Others operated completely alone. A few even seemed to be fighting each other until they suddenly turned to attack the Devourers. The mining ship Prospector just rammed a Devourer vessel, reported Kim with amazement in her voice. The pilot ejected at the last second and was picked up by a passenger liner that was pretending to run away. Tourism ship Star Wanderer is using its observation deck as a sniper platform, added Hayes. They've got civilian volunteers with military rifles taking shots at Devourer sensor arrays. Cooper watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. It was complete chaos, but it was working. The Devourers were trying to adapt to human tactics, but there were no consistent tactics to adapt to. Every human ship was doing something different. "Sir, the enemy is starting to show confusion in their formations," Kim reported. "Their adaptation systems are sending conflicting signals to different parts of their fleet." Captain Stone's voice crackled over the communication system from the middle of the fighting. "Admiral, we've discovered something. When the Devourers get overloaded with too many variables, they start making mistakes. We just saw 3 of their ships accidentally fire on each other." This was the breakthrough humanity had been hoping for. The Devourers were machines, and machines could be confused by too much random input. Human unpredictability wasn't just preventing adaptation, it was causing the enemy to malfunction. "All ships, increase the chaos," Cooper ordered. "I want every commander to do the most unexpected thing they can think of. Don't follow any patterns or plans. Just make it up as you go along." The order would have horrified any traditional military commander, but the humans and their alien allies embraced it. Korath warriors abandoned their disciplined battle formations to charge single enemy ships. Zilani scientists used their research vessels as decoys while launching surprise attacks with weapons they had invented during the battle. Ethereal collective beings turned their energy forms into living weapons that the Devourers couldn't even detect properly. The turning point came when a damaged human cargo ship, piloted by a retired merchant named Captain Bill Murphy, found himself face-to-face with one of the largest Devourer vessels. Instead of running or fighting, Murphy did something completely unexpected. He surrendered. The Devourer ship, programmed to analyze and counter every possible military response, had no protocols for dealing with surrender. While its systems tried to process this unexpected input, Murphy activated his ship's self-destruct system and took out the enemy command vessel in a massive explosion. "That's the most human thing I've ever seen," Cooper said with pride. "Bill, Murphy just confused a machine to death." The battle raged for 18 hours. Human forces lost hundreds of ships, but they kept fighting with a determination that amazed their alien allies. Civilian volunteers flew damaged warships into enemy formations. Teenagers with mining equipment disabled Devourer weapons systems. Elderly scientists turned their laboratories into bomb factories. But the real victory came when Lieutenant Commander Kim made a crucial discovery. "Admiral, the Devourers are trying to retreat. Their main fleet is pulling back toward the edge of the solar system." "Pursuing them," announced Stone from the New Horizon. "All available ships follow my lead. Don't let them escape to regroup." The final phase of the battle was more like a chase than a fight. Human ships, supported by their alien allies, hunted down the remaining Devourer vessels one by one. The mechanical fleet that had seemed invincible was falling apart because they couldn't handle the chaos of human warfare. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. For a moment, nobody could believe it was over. Then the communication channels erupted with cheers from across the galaxy. Messages poured in from every surviving Confederation world. Species that had rejected humanity 6 months ago were now begging Earth to lead the rebuilding effort. Even Overlord Vex Catherine, speaking from the ruins of the Zilani capital, publicly apologized for the Confederation's previous treatment of humanity. "Perhaps," he said in a galactic broadcast, We were wrong about what qualities matter in a way civilized species. Humanity has shown us that unpredictability and chaos properly applied are more valuable than all our ancient wisdom. President Price addressed the galaxy from the steps of the Global Assembly Building. Behind her, representatives from dozens of species stood together, ready to build a new kind of galactic government. The old Confederation believed that diversity was dangerous, she said. They wanted everyone to think alike, act alike, and fight alike. But diversity isn't weakness, it's our greatest strength. When we all think differently, we can solve problems that uniform thinking cannot handle. The new Galactic Alliance was founded 3 months later, with Earth as its capital. Instead of demanding uniformity from member species, the Alliance celebrated differences. Military forces were specifically designed to include multiple tactical approaches. Scientific research teams mixed different ways of thinking. Even diplomatic negotiations encouraged creative solutions rather than rigid protocols. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral and serving as Earth's representative to the Alliance Council, looked out at the diverse group of beings working together in the new council chambers. The same aliens who had once called humans too unpredictable were now asking for advice on how to be more flexible in their own thinking. Ambassador Kate Fisher, now Secretary General of the Alliance, smiled as she watched a group of young humans and aliens working together on a joint research project. "You know," she said to Morrison, "I think being rejected from the Confederation was the best thing that ever happened to us." Morrison nodded. "It taught us that we don't need permission to do what's right. And sometimes the qualities that make you different are exactly what the universe needs." In the end, humanity didn't just save the galaxy from the devourers. They saved it from the idea that there was only one right way to live, fight, or think. The galaxy was bigger and more beautiful because of its differences, not in spite of them. And Earth, the planet that had been told it wasn't good enough to join, the galactic community became the heart of a new kind of civilization that valued chaos, creativity, and the courage to be different.